Many doubt the Ricoh GR's ability when it comes to portraiture, mainly because it's not the reason we typically pick up the Ricoh GR in the first place. So I wanted to challenge myself. Let's do an entire portrait shoot with just the Ricoh GR3X, straight out of camera JPEGs, and a little bit of help from my new favorite retouching app, IIIx. In this video, I'll break down 4 of the common blockers people have with shooting portraits with the Ricoh GR3 and the GR3X and show you how to overcome them. Before we dive into it, I wanted to thank today's video sponsor, IIIx. IIIx is a new AI retouching software from Skyloom, the makers of Luminar. It was developed in partnership with portrait photographer and YouTube creator Julia Trotti to streamline the retouching workflow, reducing what used to be tons of actions and layers in Photoshop down to just simple sliders. And for someone like me who uses my cameras with straight out of camera JPEGs and JPEG film simulation recipes, IIIx is a great tool to get portraits with a professional retouch look with minimal post-processing time. So I'm going to walk you through a few edits within IIIx, but first let's get to the Ricoh portrait shoot. The first challenge is that the Ricoh GR has a fixed 28mm or 40mm lens. And while the 40mm lens isn't exactly a wide angle, it's still wider than traditional portrait lenses like 50mm to like 85mm. To overcome this, we needed to use creative angles and also maintain a specific distance to avoid distortion. This means positioning subjects at a comfortable distance and intentionally framing so that it enhances facial structure without any type of unwanted exaggeration. The next challenge is going to be one that a lot of people struggle with, is the lack of bokeh. And this is because the Ricoh GR's APS-C sensor combined with the f2.8 aperture offers a limited shallow depth of field effect. So it makes it challenging to achieve that strong background blur and effective subject separation. The solution here is to maximize the subject separation by positioning the subject with a distance to the background and also trying to use contrasting colors and textures in order to create that background separation. This will enhance focus on the subject without needing any type of heavy background blur. And on the flip side, you can also use a foreground element to dirty the frame or to help focus the viewer's eye to the subject. The next challenge is that the Ricoh's default JPEG rendering can feel pretty contrasty and not really flattering for skin tones. To overcome this, we need to actually customize our Ricoh's film simulations. For example, my recipe creates warm tones with just the right amount of contrast for everyday documentation and portraits. So you want to make sure that you're customizing your settings to deliver naturally pleasing skin tones with a subtle contrast straight out of camera that fits the workflow and the look that you're looking for. One of the most difficult challenges with the Ricoh GR is that the GR lens is optimized for edge-to-edge sharpness, and combined with the sensor, this makes it very ideal for street photography, but sometimes may be too sharp for portraits. My approach to solving this is using directional lighting that will contour the face for some type of natural definition. And as a bonus tip, you can get the HDF model, which has a highlight diffusion filter, or you can also add a mist filter with an adapter, and this will soften the skin rendering a little bit and bloom the highlights, which will further reduce how much post-processing you need for the final portrait result. With that said, for close-up portraits using the Ricoh GR, it really does help to do some retouching after the fact. To get that professional look, let's dive into IIIx to add a finishing touch to these portraits. I love that it has integration with other photo editing tools, which allows photographers to work within our preferred environments without the need for completely changing our workflow. For me, I cull the images in Lightroom. Remember, these are straight out of camera JPEGs, and then I use the Lightroom plugin to bring the photo into IIIx to retouch it. We're just going to sort through these photos right here and pick one that might need some retouching. So this one. So I'm going to go in here and go into File, and then plug in Extras, and then open in Aperty. So now that we're in Aperty, the interface you can see is very straightforward. It's very user-friendly. For me, I never went down the retouching route for weddings or portraiture, even when I had a raw workflow, because I didn't want to invest the time to learn how to do professional retouching, lots of dodging and burning, complex layers and filters, and cleaning up blemishes with like a tablet was not something that I wanted to implement into my workflow, mainly because the amount of time it needed in conjunction with running my business. So I've been waiting for a tool like Aperty that could give me that retouch look with a much more streamlined workflow. Instead of actions and layers, we're simply just going to move around sliders here to get the look that we want. And my biggest concern always with retouching is, can we maintain a natural look? One that doesn't look artificial, and most importantly, it has to preserve the unique look of my subject's skin. My model for this shoot was actually my wife. And for me, I really love the freckles on her face. So let's start doing some retouching and see how it does in terms of retaining that. So we're going to go into here and go into the retouching section, and then we're going to just, I usually like to test apps by just putting the slider all the way up to 100 to see what it does. So straight to 100, like this is the difference before and after, and you can see that the freckles are still pretty much maintained, which is pretty amazing. And this actually doesn't look too bad. You can see a little bit of here. This mole is going away. So let's dial that back a little bit. Let's see. So we're going to bring this to around 50 or so. And let's see the before and after. And I like this. It retains a lot of the freckles and just the natural markings on her face. And you can even still see the pores. So I like that it removes the blemishes, but you can still see the skin. It still looks very real and authentic. A good tip is that when you are looking at it zoomed in, you also want to zoom out and just make sure you dial back the effect so you don't overdo it. So now let's do some skin smoothing for the face. Again, we're going to try to see what it looks like at 100. We're going to go all the way to 100. This doesn't look too bad at all. It's actually still pretty natural. But for this case, I don't want it this much, so I'm going to dial it back a little bit. And it's very, very subtle. I love how it's so subtle, still preserving the natural tones and the details of her skin. And it doesn't look too plasticky, too waxy, too artificial. So one thing that's pretty cool is this shine removal tool. Because I was shooting with directional light, it is kind of bright on her face, especially with the Ricoh's JPEG rendering. So let's try to remove that shine a little bit. Since I didn't have like a scrim in the field to soften the light, we're just going to go here. Let's bring it to 100. This actually looks pretty good. I think this looks pretty good, but I want to bring a little bit more contrast. So let's dial this back a little bit. Looks pretty good. So you can see it's subtle difference. See a little highlights on the cheeks here, and then it brings it to a lot closer look. And this is crazy considering that this image right here is a JPEG out of camera from the Ricoh with a little bit of retouching. So if you want to see the before, after, there's not much more editing that you need for this look. I really do think Aperty is going to change the portrait workflow when it comes to many pro photographers, and also for photographers like me who do minimal editing. We're not working with a raw workflow. It offers the benefit of a streamlined workflow powered by AI that gives a professionally retouched final look. This is pretty crazy. I'm pretty much going to be using this tool anytime I do portraits. It's not much time, but the effect that it gives is totally worth it. If you want to try Aperty out for yourself, check out the link down in the description below. Whether you are a pro or a hobbyist, if you're photographing people, this is really something that you need to check out. Thanks again to Aperty for sponsoring this video. My name is Reggie Ballesteros. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, consider subscribing for more Ricoh content. And if you want to see the film simulation recipe I use for these portraits, check out this video right here.